By the end of this video, you will know two things about the Greek text of Matthew 5, 17 to 20, which are invisible or hard to see in the English translation, but which are important for understanding the passage. Hi, Rob McIver here. Let's take a deeper dive into the Greek text of Matthew 5, 17 to 20. We start in verse 18, which reads, "Truly I tell you, until heaven and earth pass away, iota hen, a mere kariah, me plηρόσαι, apo to nomu, until everything's accomplished." In English translation, this is already a strong statement. For example, the New Revised Standard Version of this text reads, "For truly I tell you, until heaven and earth pass away, not one letter, not one stroke of a letter will pass from the law until all is accomplished." But did you notice the me plus subjunctive construction, which changes this from a strong statement to a very, very forceful one? Let me explain. The table you see here is taken from our book, Intermediate New Testament Greek Made Easier. It's found in section 5.1, which summarizes all the different uses of the subjunctive in the New Testament. And one of the uses is to use me plus the subjunctive to indicate strong denial. And in section 5.4, where I give some further examples, I make two further comments. One is that it is often very difficult to translate the construction me plus subjunctive into English to capture the force of it. And the second one is me plus subjunctive is often found in exegetically significant passages. This then is the first insight of the meaning of Matthew 5, 17 to 20, which is clearly seen in the Greek, but which is not so obvious in English translation. Indeed, it's nearly impossible to find stronger Greek words to emphasize the continuing validity of the law in the life of a Christian than the words iota n a mere kariah, me plηρόσαι, apo to nomu. As a bonus, there's another me plus subjunctive construction in verse 20, which reads, "Truly I tell you, that unless your righteousness exceeds that of the scribes and Pharisees, me eis tein basilein ton uranon." The new RSV translates this verse as, "For I tell you, unless your righteousness exceeds that of the scribes and Pharisees, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven." Now, this is one instance where you see that it has been possible to capture in English translation the strong denial aspect of the me plus subjunctive construction. "You will never enter" is a pretty good rendition of me eis elfeta. So between them, the two me plus subjunctive constructions in verses 18 and 20 say two things. First, for Christians, nothing but nothing has gone from the law. And secondly, their righteousness must exceed that of the scribes and Pharisees. These two statements of Jesus are particularly problematic for modern Christians, particularly if you've actually read the laws of the Hebrew Bible and observe which of them modern Christians pay attention to. Fortunately, in Matthew 5, 21 to 48, Jesus goes on to illustrate what he means. And if you want to know how I read these verses, you can do no better than to read chapter 2 of my book, The Four Faces of Jesus. One of the important clues in how to understand the words of Jesus in verses 18 and 20 is already found in verse 17, and it is the word πληρόσαι. And this word provides the second insight into the meaning of Matthew 5:17-20 that's more readily available in the Greek than in the English. And this is because the normal translation of πληρόσαι in English is to fulfill, and the word fulfill in English has a certain range of meaning, which may not correspond to the range of meanings of the Greek word πληρόσαι. By the way, this range of meaning is called the semantic domain. And the usual way to find the semantic range of a word found in the Greek New Testament is to consult the dictionary known to academics as BDAG. BDAG, by the way, stands for the various editors that have been prominently involved in the development of this dictionary, namely Bauer, Danker, Arndt and Gingerich. Here is my own copy of this dictionary. It's an older version, and these days I usually rely on the version of BDAG that I purchased for the software program Logos. Now there's a further important source for understanding the semantic domain of words found in the Greek New Testament called the Theological Dictionary of the New Testament, usually abbreviated TDNT. And when I'm writing a paper and when my students are writing papers, we consult first BDAG and then move on to TDNT and get the wider picture. To keep this video short though, we'll just look in BDAG, in the full knowledge that if you are serious about investigating the semantic range of this word, you will probably take the time to search out the entry in TDNT and look through that. The word πληρόσαι, found in Matthew 5:17, is the aorist infinitive of the word πληρόω. And BDAG lists several possible meanings for this word. First, it means to make full. It can mean filling up things. For example, a net can be full of fish, as in Matthew 13:48. Or a house might be filled with sound, as in Acts 2:2. It can mean a person being filled with powers or qualities. Somebody can be filled with gladness, as in Acts 2:28, or filled with wisdom, as in Luke 2:40. So those are meanings associated with the concept of to fill something. There's a second range of uses which is associated with a meaning to complete a period of time. In Mark 1:15, for example, Jesus is said to preach the time has been fulfilled, and in Acts 7:30, Stephen speaks of the end of a 40-year period, using the word πληρόω. Πληρόω is also used to finish something that has already begun. For example, one can finish speaking, as Jesus did in Luke 7:1, or someone can complete a task assigned to them, as Saul and Barnabas did in Acts 12:25. Another meaning of πληρόω is to bring something to a designated end. And one such designated end might be the fulfillment of a divine prediction. As for example, where the evangelist comments in Matthew 1:22, all this took place to fulfill what had been spoken by the Lord through the prophets. And to fulfill is a translation of πληρώθαι. And Matthew uses the same language in Matthew 2:15 to 23, 4:14, 8, 7, 12, 17, 13, 35, etc., etc. Another designated end might be to complete an obligation. We have in Romans 13:8, for the one who loves another has fulfilled the law. Has fulfilled is a good translation of pleroken. And in Colossians 4:17, we have the words, and say to Archippus, see that you complete the task that you have received from the Lord. So see that you complete is a translation of πληρόω. From this exploration of the semantic range of the Greek word πληρόω, you can see that the English word fill and fulfill are good translations of the word. Nevertheless, the Greek word has a richness and texture that is just not available in English translations. Furthermore, when you're translating, you've got to choose one option, don't you? Because you can only use one word. So coming back to πληρόσαι in Matthew 5:17. Now that we've looked at the semantic range of the word, we can see that there are several possible interpretations of the words of Jesus. When he said he came to fulfill the law, he could have meant he came to complete the law in some way. Or did he mean that he came as a fulfillment of the law? Remember, the law sometimes is seen as a prophecy in the New Testament. Or do the words mean that when Jesus came, he came as the goal of the law, something the law pointed to? Or did he mean that with his coming, the era of law was at an end? Now, the context is going to make some of these options more likely than others. Remember, we've got the ume plus subjunctive, where Jesus is saying the law definitely isn't going to be finishing with him. But just knowing the semantic range of the word opens up a range of possible interpretations. So that is the second insight that we can clearly see in the Greek, which may not be so obvious in the English. By the way, you might be interested in Chapter 8 of my textbook, Intermediate New Testament Greek Made Easier. In there, I have an analysis of Matthew 5, where I invite you to answer questions on the syntax of various features of the chapter, and I also provide answers in the right column, so you can compare your answers with the questions that I've asked. And there are cross-references back to earlier chapters, which bring you to an explanation of things like ume plus subjunctive and other semantic features of the chapter. So by the time you've worked through those questions and answers, you're going to understand the Greek text much better. You may be also interested in other videos on my channel, New Testament Greek Made Easier. I've tried to be helpful by indicating which videos provide basic introductions to features of Greek grammar and which videos go into a deeper dive. So videos with a yellow border are introductory videos, and videos with an orange border tend to take a deeper dive into some aspect of New Testament Greek. And hey, if you found this video helpful in any way, why don't you click the like or heart icon below? Many thanks.